Hey folks, Ray from loveyourrv.com. It's really starting to feel like fall now. October 6th today. We got about one more month to enjoy Vancouver Island before we head south for the winter. So it's about this time that I start thinking about getting the rig ready for the big long trip. Kind of go through a checklist of things to little jobs, get things organized. I feel it's better to make sure everything is okay while I'm here stationary rather than things cropping up on the road. So kind of got myself a list here. Also wrote up a blog post detailing all the things that I check and do, sort of my snowbird prep checklist. I guess it would also come in handy if someone's pulling their stuff out of storage for spring. Of course, it's going to be mostly fifth wheel centric because that's what we have. Some of the things though will transfer over to other rigs. So I've written up a pretty comprehensive blog post with all the things in my checklist, the tasks I perform. So I'll put that in the description. I thought I'd just do a quick video, give you a quick overview of the stuff I do. Well, it might not be very quick, but if you want more in-depth information and then links to more stuff, a lot of the stuff I've written articles and videos about in the past, so that'll be linked in the blog post. As far as products I've used too will be linked. So let's get to it. I've got a few categories here broken down. One of the categories is cleaning and lubing, safety, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, and then some miscellaneous stuff. So we'll start with cleaning. So cleaning will start up here on the roof. I got a rubber roof. Usually I'll just use a soft bristled long-handled brush, get some Dawn dishwashing soap and water, and give it a good scrub down and rinse. If there's any nasty areas with some stains and stuff, I might use some commercial roof cleaner, or acetone works pretty well too. Clean off my solar panels. And also I'll clean out the gutters, make sure there's nothing blocking the gutters up here. You see along there's some gutter rails and spouts. Just make sure there's nothing trapped in there. But you want to do the roof first before you do the sidewalls, because whatever dirt is up here is going to, of course, go down your sidewalls. So I always start with the roof. Once the roof's all clean, then I'll start on the sidewalls. Give it a good wash with just any kind of automotive or RV wash. I'm not really picky about that. But when I wax it at this point, I like to hand wax everything and get a really coat of wax on it. So I use this stuff called Pro RV boat and aircraft wax. It's kind of a nice paste wax, and I'll give everything a good wax with that. In between time, I like a stuff called Protect All kind of spray-on wax, but that's just kind of a quickie wax. This one is more of a hand polish. So, and I also like to really double or triple wax my front cap, so that when I get bugs on it, they come off pretty easy. Next, I'll clean the windows, and I'll pull out all the window screens and also the screens in my vent, and even pull off the screen door. And I can bring them out here and use a hose to blast out all the dust and stuff, bugs and things that have gotten caught in the screens. And then we'll go inside. I'll do all the floors and the walls and the ceilings. I usually like to use a pine saw. Probably do that pretty soon. Anne's away on a trip, so it kind of makes kind of a nasty smell, but it dissipates. But I find that cleans and disinfects everything really well. Also, I'll do the awning, pull it out and give it a good cleaning. They usually suggest, the Domatic manual says to use a quarter cup of bleach, quarter cup of dish soap and some water, and spray it on, roll it up, unroll it, rinse it, and then I usually treat it with a 303 aerospace. And then we got tires and wheels. Give the tires a good cleaning and inspection, and also use some polish on my mag wheels there. Get them looking nice and shiny. It gives me a chance to inspect them. But I've done most of that because I just did the bearings and brakes. And then I'll pull everything out of my storage compartments. I've got a big storage area in there, and at the front, just yard everything out of there. And then I'll give everything a good vacuum. Make sure there isn't any mouse droppings or bugs or anything in there. Just give it a good inspection. And then while I have everything out, I can kind of go through and see what we're going to be taking on the trip. That's a big thing, is to reduce the weight of the rig. A lot of things, when we're stationary here for 5 months, I'll bring a lot of stuff out of our storage room that we want to use here. So before we blast off, I want to separate all the stuff I want to put back in storage and only carry the minimal stuff that I absolutely need, just to keep the weight of the rig down. But because it's amazing how the weight can creep up over time. So this is my time of the year to figure out the stuff that I don't need to be carrying. Oh, got a bird at the feeder. Hey buddy, it's a juvenile red-winged blackbird. Let's see. That's one thing I used that ladder gadget for that I got last winter. It's been great for the feeder, watching the birds out the back window. Okay, next category, lubrication. So, I'll get into the front storage compartment there, and the landing legs, I'll go in and inspect them. There's some bevel gears on the top, so I'll go through and do the lubrication there if they need it. Every couple of years I pull them right out and re-lube the whole leg. I've sort of showed that in the past. Like I say, there's going to be links to everything in the blog post, so if you want to get any more in-depth information, you can go there. Also, I usually go lubricate the hitch, clean it all up, and re-lubricate it. This year I won't have to because we're going to have the new truck, but I'll make sure to check its lubrication. It should be good, brand new. Let's see. Oh, there's a beagle. Wants to come out. I can hear the beagle. Oh, settle down. There you go. There you go. It's bright out here. Been kind of tough for little old Angie lately. She hasn't been feeling very well. She's developed an epilepsy over the last year. It's called Lafore disease. She has little seizures because of bright lights, and it's a progressive genetic disorder, so it's been getting worse and worse. Don't want to be a bummer, but you know, everybody gets really old at some point. So anyway, enough of that. Okay, other things we lube is the stabilizer jacks. Down there, use some dry lube on them. Also my stairs, I'll use some dry lube on them. And then we'll go with the slide out underneath here. It's got a couple rails here. Usually clean them all off and use some dry lube on them. And there's also a ram. Let's just go around. See that? Yeah, this shiny cylinder here is the ram, and it gets lubed with some silicone lubricant, spray-on lubricant. I also like to wax this top plastic part here just to make it slide in and out a little easier. This thing sort of slides on a thin piece of carpet as it goes in, so I like to make everything as slippery as possible for that. And waste valves. So we have the kind that use a long kind of metal pull rod. I've replaced 2 of my waste valves with electric, so I don't have to worry about that, but I usually like to get in there with some silicone lubricant and spray that rod down, push it in and out a few times just so it isn't sticky and it's lubricated. And to finish up the lubrication, I'll go through and do all the door catches and all the hinges on like my storage bays and stuff like that. And I'm using that new lube ball that I discovered. It's kind of a nice lubricant. It likes to stay in place. It's repels water and doesn't travel as much, so it's been nice. Also, it's clear, doesn't stain things. Used to use kind of a lithium or silicone. It would run down and cause stains, but this lube ball's been really good. So I'll just go through and do all the hinges and catches with that. I'll finish up my lubrication. Next category is safety. So one thing I always keep on top of is the ladder. Make sure it's not coming loose, no screws are coming loose. I always look at these end caps. These plastic end caps on mine are prone to cracking, so I always make sure to inspect them. I don't want to be falling because I let the ladder get all loose and rickety. Next is gas lines. I'll usually crawl under and inspect the gas lines, inspect my propane tanks. I think mine are actually pretty close to needing to be replaced. I'm not sure. I think it's 10 years or something you're allowed to use them for. I think we're going down for our 8th year of snowbirding, so it must be getting close. But I'll inspect all the lines on them, make sure nothing's starting to look all worn and cracked. And also, you take out, I made that homemade manometer. There's a link to that, and I'll go use that, and then I can see if there's any small leaks in the system that I should attend to. I've mentioned reducing weight. That's a biggie to stay safe. You don't want to overload the rig. I'll look at all my detectors. I got a propane detector, carbon monoxide smoke detector. Just make sure they got good batteries and they're not past their best before date. Stock up our first aid kits. We carry a large first aid kit, and then we carry one in our knapsacks and in the truck. Just make sure the stuff in there is good, has all the items, and replace any that have been used up. Weather radio, make sure it has batteries and it's operating properly. I have a sea crane radio that has a weather alert on it. So I'll just make sure it's ready to go. Make sure we got batteries for the CB and it's working. And we have a set of walkie-talkies too that have a kind of can pick up weather as well. So that stuff, I'll make sure everything is working properly. Next is electrical. So one thing I'll do is test the braking on the rig. Since it's been sitting so long, I'll hook up the truck's brake controller and make sure it's operating. Also, that safety cable, I'll make sure it's working right. There's a breakaway cable that if it pulls out, it should lock up all your trailer brakes. Lights, of course, I'll go through, test all the running lights and the signal lights and the brake lights, make sure they're all operating properly. Kind of have a look at the sockets, make sure they're not corroded or anything like that and going to cause problems. My batteries in the front compartment, I got those 4 big golf cart batteries in there, and I'll usually make sure the water's topped up, and then maybe a week later on a sunny day I'll equalize my batteries using my solar controller so they're all up and ready to go. Also check the connections on them, make sure they're not corroded, maybe retighten them, and just do all the other connections I have in the front storage compartment. There I have a lot of connections with my solar and boondocking system, so I'll just go through and check all them out. Maybe pull out my the inside the power center that has the AC and DC distribution system and make sure there's no bad looking connections in there or any signs of overheating. Go through and make sure all the appliances are operating properly, clean them up, just from the microwave and whatever like that. Make sure my solar panels are working, so I'll go up there and make sure they're all getting similar outputs and they're not starting to go downhill. They all should be about even and putting out the same amount of amps. Make sure they're not starting to wear out, or maybe one's not putting out power or something like that. Generator. So I have a new generator, so I don't have to do too much with it other than maybe exercise it a bit, give it an hour or two of run time, make sure everything's okay. My old generator, I used to go through and do the maintenance, change the oil and filter and run it for a while, make sure it was in good shape. We start using a lot of the generator when we're boondocking. And then I'll go through the heating and cooling, make sure you know, the air conditioner is working right and our furnace is working right, do any maintenance they need. And also I'll go and check all the power cords and adapters. I actually just did that recently to this one, pulled it apart and checked the connections inside to make sure there's nothing going bad there. And also on the plug-in end, sometimes the prongs start to get oxidized, so we kind of clean them up. And then all the adapters, make sure they're okay. And I also carry a large extension cord, so I look at that too. So next, a lot of stuff, eh? A lot of stuff, but you know, an ounce of prevention is a pound of cure. And I've got most of the month to putter away at it. So we'll go mechanical, and that was just recently. I'm good there. That was the usually pull apart and check the brakes and the bearings and repack the grease on them. It's a good time to do it before we leave on a big trip. Landing legs, if they need to be pulled out and done, or kind of talked about that. The suspension, I'll crawl underneath there and look at my leaf springs and all the shackles and bushings and bolts, make sure they're in good shape. And then I'll go through and check the torque on my kind of vital things. You want your lug nuts, the brake assembly, the U-clamps underneath, my pin box, my hitch, and there'll be torque specs for each of those. So I'll take a torque wrench and make sure they're all done up properly. And let's see, the slide, probably run the slide out in and out a few times to make sure it's aligned properly. I've never had any problems with my slide. It's always stayed really well aligned, but there is some adjustments down underneath that you can get at. And then I'll also go through and do all the work on the seals, make sure they're all in really good shape, and use some seal lubricant on them. Yeah, and that leads me to seals. So I'll go up on the roof especially and check all my seals all around the vents, and then down below I'll check all the sealant all around the rig. There's that time I found a crack in here in the sealant, and it was causing a little bit of sponginess on the board underneath, so I caught it just in time and resealed it. So it's a good time before winter hits and we're going to be exposed to a lot of rain to go through and just check all the sealant and replace as necessary, especially on the roof. The mechanical vents, windows, check all the window seals, and the underbelly, I just did that too. So before I leave on a trip, I like to crawl under there and make sure there's no loose areas of we have like a plastic underbelly, make sure nothing's coming loose down there. It's usually Angie's job, go inspect the underbelly. But I recently did that, so you can go watch that video if you want to see that. And finally I'll pull I have kind of a bike rack attached to the bumper here, so I usually pull it out, lubricate it, and just make sure the welds are okay and the bolts are holding up properly. And the bumper here, I think I'm almost due to, yeah, I should put some paint on that. It's starting to rust there a little bit. So it's time to sand that down, put a little paint on it, on the bumper there. Next category, plumbing. So a big one will be the water heater. I'll pull it and drain the water heater. This one has an anode rod, so I'll pull it out and see what condition it's in and replace if necessary. If I got a lot of hard water deposits in there, usually I'll put it back together and then fill it up with a 50-50 concentration of vinegar and water, let it sit, and then reflush it. That usually helps clear it out. I think I'm going to be pretty good though. We have a really soft water here, so I find after sitting here for a while, we don't have hard water problems at all. Next, we'll flush the waste tanks really well and check all the plumbing parts under there. I'm pretty happy with that because I did that job where I put the electric valves in there, so I found the cracks that were in the tanks and I've patched them. I'll probably do one more quick inspection of them before we leave, but I'll flush the tanks really well. Usually I'll use the built-in flusher and a wand flusher down the toilet, particularly try to get the black tank as clean as possible, and go through and check my sewer hoses, make sure they're all in good shape, and then my fresh water hoses, make sure they're in good shape. Flush them out usually with some bleach. For the freshwater tank, I'll usually drain it right down. It's a 60-gallon tank, well, almost 60-gallon. And I'll usually add maybe a cup of bleach or so and then fill it up with water, and I'll let it sit here for a good couple days, and then I'll run a little bit into the lines and let it sit at least 4 or 5 hours in the lines, and then I'll run it through the system, fill it up and run it a few more times just to sanitize the freshwater system. And water filter. So I got this new water filter system, and there'll be time to put in fresh filters in that and hook it back up. I've put it back up on the bumper there, and then just test it out for leaks and stuff so that it's ready to go. I was using it a bit here, but our water is so clean here on Vancouver Island, it's almost pointless to have the filter on. The water coming out of the taps here is awesome, tastes great. So, but when I go down south, I use it all the time, especially when I'm boondocking. I use that system to fill up the tank with. And inside the rig, I'll go through all the faucets and drains, make sure everything's draining well. And the faucets, I'll check the aerator screens and make sure they're not clogged, replace them if needed. Okay, final category, sort of miscellaneous stuff. Defrost the refrigerator, then clean in behind the fridge, check the vent, see if there's any insects that have built little nests in there or anything. Check the drain hose, make sure it's draining properly, not leaking and not plugged. Just kind of do a little refrigerator maintenance. I'll try it on gas and make sure I'm getting a nice clean blue flame. If not, I'll pull out the burner and clean it. Just make sure that fridge is working right. Also, I'll check the furnace filter and the AC filter, make sure they're ready to go. And then I also got a lot of electronic devices, got GPS, backup cameras, all sorts of odds and ends. So I'll go through all my electronics and make sure they're working properly. And finally, crawl under the rig and inside the storage areas, and with some put some of that anti-pest mouse spray foam. I've done most of it, but any little holes, because once we get down south, a lot of times we're in areas where those little critters want to crawl in. And finally, I don't have to do much this year, but in past years I would take the truck into the mechanic and make sure everything was okay, all the fluids were changed, make sure the brakes and tires and all that sort of thing were in good shape. But this year we get a new truck, so my only job will be breaking in the new truck and trying to figure out what to do with the storage situation. I'm going to have to transfer my toolboxes into the new truck. I've got this big metal one, and then I got the black one there. So I hope they both fit, and sort that out. And of course then I'm going to have to match the new truck with my pin box and hitch, and hopefully I'm going to have enough clearance. So that'll be another video. Anyway, I don't want to drag on too long, that's a lot of information. Just wanted to give you a quick overview. Like I say, go to the blog post and I've written up all the steps more in depth. Till next time, Ray from loveyourrv.com. Thanks for watching. Cheers, everyone.